Hey everyone, my name's Christy. Welcome to my corner. It is Friday, which means that this is Flosstube number 3. I don't actually know how much I have to say today because I've had a lot of work to do. I haven't had much time for stitching, so I don't have any finished objects from this week, but I do have some whips and I have some older finished objects and I have a haul and I have some experiments. So I do have things that have happened this week, just not a ton of stitching actually. I also don't have any history this week, so if you are hoping to get some history and you haven't seen my historical baking video that I posted on Tuesday, I'll put the link to that up here. But just a warning, if you watch my videos because you think I'm completely adorable, don't watch that video. It'll change your opinion. I look terrible. But if you want to see a discussion of historical weights and measures and watch me struggle with math, then that is the video for you, and I highly recommend it. With all that being said, let's start with my whips this week. I actually have 2 new starts. So the first new start is another King Harold from the Bayeux Tapestry, right there. And I'm doing this for a friend of mine who is also a medievalist. We went to grad school together. So I'm making this for her, and it is on a linen from the Fat Quarter Shop, which I don't remember the name of, but I'll put the name here and I'll put the link below. But it's like a rustic linen, like a homespun, I think it's called. So I'll put the link below and I'll put the actual name like right here. So you can get it if you like it. It's really cool because it is more rustic looking and you can see the weave really nicely, I think anyway. So this is the linen that she chose and this is the linen that she's getting. This is an image from the Bayeux Tapestry, and if you don't know what the Bayeux Tapestry is, I talk a lot about that in my Flosstube number 2, which I'll put right here so you can check that out. And I talk about the history and the construction of the Bayeux Tapestry. So that's my first whip for the week and that I've been kind of working on the most. My second whip is a longer standing whip, and this is the Your Sweet embroidery from Penguin and Fish, and I'll put the link to this below too. This is the August embroidery of the month, which is still available until Monday. And it has 2 versions. It has a thread painting version with lots of shading, long and short stitches, and that's what I'm doing. And then it has a more simplified version, so if you think the wording is really cute, or you like peaches and strawberries, you can do that one. And I'll put the link to that below as well. And then my final whip, I actually just started yesterday, and I've been kind of inspired by everyone's Halloween work, Halloween stitching. So I wanted to do some Halloween stitching of my own. So I started an embroidery of Hans Holbein's Danse Macabre, which is essentially part of a series of woodcuts that he did in, I think, the 16th century. I forget. I'm not very good with dates. I'm like the worst historian ever. But anyway, I started this yesterday to kind of get inspired for Halloween. And this is on another piece of linen that I got from the Fat Quarter Shop last week, the ivory, but then I over dyed it with coffee, with like leftover coffee. And I really like how it turned out. I didn't dye the whole yard with the coffee, and I didn't use all of my coffee dye on this piece, but so I'm gonna show you. I really like, I don't know if you can see, I really like the modeling. I thought it would be really nice with the Halloween theme, and I'm stitching it in Weeks Dye Works Onyx, which I have to buy more of because I have literally a strand left. So that was probably not a great idea to start that with so little thread. So I'll have to pick up thread. So if you have a place you really like that sells Weeks Dye Works, let me know, because I don't have a Weeks Dye Works supplier. So that would be actually very helpful for me. I would appreciate that. Those are my whips, and the Hans Holbein is kind of a sketch, and so that kind of inspired my choices to show you my old finished objects. And so I actually have a bunch of objects that are sketches or like drawings. Some of them are my own sketches, some of them are taken from images that I've then turned into sketches. So I'm gonna get started on that. One theme that I stitched a lot until basically this summer was the clock tower from my university. And so what I do is I do it usually in various shades of blue. Those are our colors, are blue and white, or blue and light blue with some white. So this is our clock tower, and this is done on a linen. And then I also will sometimes do it on a chiffon, so it's see-through. And I think that that just feels very neat to me. I just really like it. And these are both just finished in the hoop. This one I have to glue to the hoop, which I don't do very often, but for chiffon you can't have a backing on it because it kind of defeats the purpose of the chiffon. Another kind of genre of sketches that I like doing are anatomical sketches that I change in some way. So for instance, for Valentine's Day, I'm not super romantic, and so lots of different hearts and stuff are not really my thing, but I decided to do a rib cage with a heart in it. So it's on a kind of a very rustic linen again, with a very sketchy heart, very sketchy rib cage, and then a love heart that's actually quite shiny. I don't know if you can see how shiny that is, but that's kind of shiny. So that's one of them. And then I've also did this anatomical heart with floral in it, and it has a little wool. It's been hanging out with the wool. So I have this anatomical heart that I've also done, and this hangs up in my my room here, just, you know, to keep it out of a box. I want to start sketching. I know this sounds really weird, but I kind of want to start sketching or embroidering kitchen themed objects with like food on them. So here's my garlic, and I love this piece. I don't know why I love this piece so much, but I really love this piece. And it says garlic is the soul of cooking. And as an Italian American, I use a lot of garlic. My rule in the kitchen is that 1 clove of garlic is never enough unless the recipe is for roasting a clove of garlic, and even then you should probably roast 2. So this makes me really happy. I put garlic in almost all my cooking, and I love it. I do have another sort of medieval pandemic inspired sketch here, and this is also one of my sayings, but it just says, you know, wash your damn hands. And then that is a medieval manicule. I'll write that here as a manicule. And essentially these are found all over medieval manuscripts to point out important passages in the manuscript. We use arrows in the modern world to point out important things, but of course arrows had a very different meaning in the Middle Ages because people were killed with them. So they used hands, and they often have really long squiggly fingers. Some of them are very, very elaborate and in color, and I have a whole kind of series of manicules that I have done in the past, but I kind of like this one. He's kind of ruffly, and I appreciate that. So that's my manicule. I have 2 sketch pieces that live in my bathroom, and don't worry, my bathroom is very long, so they're about as far away from the commode as you could possibly get. But these fit into, these are kind of grouped together, and I want to do a third one. But I have the Eiffel Tower, and my goal with these was to do a really sketch monument and then do the surrounding in more cartoony. I like the juxtaposition. So I have the slightly wonky, but not terrible, Eiffel Tower. And I have the less wonky Colosseum in Rome. And you probably can't see, but right here I have white French knot clouds. And then I would like to do either Big Ben or the Houses of Parliament in London as like the third of the trio, but we'll get to that when I get to that. And then I have some that are not fully finished. I have a Liechtenstein reproduction that I did, and this probably took me, I don't know, 8 months to do. All the French knots, I just couldn't do the French knots. And if you look very closely, the upper French knots are so much worse than the lower French knots. So this is my, probably, she was like my albatross, this crying girl. But I finished her and I love her, but I don't know how I want to fully finish her. I've been kind of thinking either framing her, but the fabric's not very good, or I was thinking of like appliquing her to something like a bag. I don't know. So I'll have to think about that. And then finally, I have a series of line embroideries. I was feeling really uninspired over the summer when things were getting really bad with COVID, and there was just a lot of uncertainty. I mean, there's still a lot of uncertainty, and it's even worse now, but at least I personally have a plan. And with when I did these, I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know how my job was going to be. So I was feeling uninspired. Long story, even longer. Someone on YouTube who is an artist, who's a sketch artist, I watched a video and she said, I don't remember who it was, and I'm really sad that I don't remember who it was, but she said that if you're not feeling inspired or creative, just draw lines. And just draw lines every day, because at least you're drawing something. And so I thought, if I'm feeling uninspired, I should just embroider lines. So I did. I decided to start embroidering lines every day, and I ended up with 4 pieces that I actually really love, and I kind of want to mount them together. So this is the first one, and they're all kind of twisty-turny, but slightly different. So there's one. Here's the second one. And number 3, I don't know, I kind of like it this way better. And then number 4 is there. So these, I kind of look at these and think about how I can keep my creativity and what I can do. And I really love them, and I think they look really cool. And they're just on a white linen from Joann's. Like it was a remnant, and the thread is just like DMC black. So I think that that's it for my previously finished objects. Yeah, and so I want to talk about my experiments. I've actually been experimenting this week with various media. My first experiment is hanging behind me still. It's my leaves. And if you saw my first Flosstube, I talked about embroidering on leaves, and I'll put a link to that up here. And I live in the southern US in Mississippi, and we have magnolia trees. And these magnolia trees drop really huge leaves that are kind of amazing. I picked one up one day and they kind of feel leathery, and I decided to embroider it. So you can watch that in my first Flosstube. But I've been kind of seeing how I can preserve the leaves better. So for example, reach behind me. This leaf here is covered in an acrylic gloss. This one right behind me here has a like wood block wax on it. And then I have some controls at the top that aren't finished in any way, just to see how they dry. So these were green when I picked them, and they're slowly turning brown. And they're turning a very dark brown, which is different than the leaves that fall on the ground, which are much lighter brown. So I have a couple of those that are, processing in the house. But that's my first experiment. So I'm hoping that I will come up with a way to make the leaves last for me if I want to embroider on them. And I do kind of like how dark this guy is, which is, like I said, much darker than the ones I pick up off the ground. That's my first experiment. My second experiment is with resin, and I would love to make tiny little embroidery jewelry. I think that would be amazing. And they sell, and I have a ton of, these tiny, tiny little hoops. But I don't love how they look. And so I was sort of thinking about how I could make tiny little rings myself. And so I got some ring molds, and I made little resin rings of all different sizes. And I'm going to try and make blanks to go inside of them and see if I can just mount a small, tiny little embroidery, just like a flower or a bug or something like that, into these hoops and attach it to an earring. Because it's resin, it's really light. I can make it any color I want, or like sparkly or whatever. So it's not perfected yet, like my leaves. It's not perfected. But as a proof of concept, it's promising. So that's good. So that's my second experiment. And my third experiment was with needle felting wool. So if you saw my first Flosstube, I think, I hauled a couple of kits from thewoolery.com, which for needle felting, and they're needle felting 2D images. And so I decided I would try, practice, because I've never done it before, and the kits weren't super cheap. I mean, they weren't like really expensive, but they weren't super cheap, and I don't want to waste that wool. And so I did some just needle felting on linen that I had from my stash. And the wool I actually had because I teach medieval history, and I teach the history of medieval and early modern women in Europe in particular. And one of the activities that we do for that class is I make them spin wool into yarn for a week and like write down how it feels. Because the goal, of course, is to show that women, although they didn't have jobs, always had jobs and were always working. And so I have a ton of leftover wool. I had no idea how much wool it would take. This is a third of what I have left after 5 years of using the wool that I purchased. So I have all this wool that I also got from the Woolery. And I want to use needle felting to make things like clouds and galaxies, like wispy things in my landscapes. So that's why I practiced with kind of more wispy things here, like little mare's clouds, whatever they're called, mare's tail clouds. And then I have more chunky clouds, and then I practiced just putting a bunch of it down right here so that when I do my needle felting kits, I can do it. I know what I'm doing. I'm storing this in this really cute tin that I just got. And I have another tin that's a little bit smaller. And I think I'm going to put my roving and my wool from my kits that's left over in here. So these two really cute tins are going to be my wool tins. And so that'll be really fun. But I do have to say that needle felting is such a satisfying craft. Seriously. Like, you are just stabbing the heck out of something hundreds of times. What a great way to get out of aggression. I thought that stabbing a needle and thread into linen would be amazing. That's nothing compared to just like stabbing things over and over again into foam, because the foam makes a really neat, like a really satisfying crunching sound. I don't know. Needle felting, really satisfying. Highly recommend it. I will post the link to the kits that I have below, and the two of the kits, one of which I'm going to show you that just came in, have instructional videos. So that was really helpful as well. And I think that takes me to my haul. It's a small haul, but it's a haul nonetheless. Like I just said, my back-ordered Woolery kit, needle felting kit came in, I think Saturday. So I'm looking forward to that. And this is the Coastal Waters, and I'll put a link below. So that came in. And these kits are really great because they have needles and a hoop and all of the wool and the linen fabric. And all you have to get are scissors and a stabby foam mat or whatever. I did watch the video for the other one that I got, the Mountain Sunset. And in the video, she's using like a felted wool mat. So I looked it up, and you can make those. And so I may try making one of those out of, I'll buy more roving, more just sort of plain roving from the Woolery for like cheap, and just make one for myself, because that just seems like something I can do. Why not? You know, experimenting. So that's the first haul for today. And then I also just got my Silk of the Month from Bestitch Me. I'm so excited. I'm so excited about this. Aren't they beautiful? They are gray, purple, and like a pinky magenta color, and they are lovely. So these are hand-dyed silks for the Silk of the Month Club, and I'll put a link to that below from Be Stitch Me. I don't know what I'm going to use the silks for. I was thinking about using silks for my Dance Macabre, my Hans Holbein Dance Macabre that I'm working on, but I realized that it has to go into water, and I do not want to put silks in the water, so I'm using just using Weeks Dye Works for that. But I need to come up with a really good project for these silks, because I'm going to be getting silk every month and I want to use it. So I'm starting a little silk collection. I am expecting a big thread haul tomorrow, so that'll be fun to talk about next week. So that's my haul, and that's my whips and my finished objects and my experiments, and I think I'm done. So thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate all the comments and that you all are enjoying my stitching. And if you'd like to see more of my embroidery or my baking or my experiments, or you just think that I'm fun, please subscribe. That'd be awesome. So with all that being said, please take care of yourselves, and I hope you have a good one.